You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And welcome to constantly breaking news and relentless melodrama, once called our political system. By the time you hear this program, even by a tenth of a second's delay, it will likely be out of date. But I comfort myself with the fact that a number of the predictions we've made here have actually turned out to come true. So, as a leap of faith, I'm going to just predict that this nation of, by, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. There's much to get to. Starting at the end and going backwards, there's fighting words, and before that, my guest for the conversation, a young woman named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people and one of the co-founders of indivisible.org. And before that, as in now, as in coming right up, we're going inside the headlines. Today, we're going to start with some good news and also end with some good news. I cannot vouch for what we report in between. Kathy Engelbert has been named the new commissioner of the WNBA as the title switches to commissioner from president. Engelbert was ranked number 18 in Fortune magazine's Most Powerful Women list for 2018, and it helps that she has Division I playing experience. She's been lauded for her commitment to diversity and inclusion in the financial industry, where she's worked for decades, and she is credited with introducing a 16-week paid family leave program in 2016 at the corporation where she previously worked, providing support not just for new parents, but for those in a caregiver position for family members. She's also CEO of Catalyst, a global nonprofit organization that states its mission as building workplaces that work for women. While we're on good news and sports, hurrahs go to Alicia Montano and former Olympian Kara Goucher, both of whom spoke up in public as well as private, calling out Nike for denying the athletes they sponsor their paychecks during pregnancy or maternity leave, forcing many of them to put their bodies and their health in jeopardy or else risk losing pay. The courage of Montano and Goucher, plus behind-the-scenes pressure from Time's Up and others, worked. Nike has announced they will change their contract to add language that explicitly protects paychecks to all female athletes during pregnancy. And our, well, not profile in courage, but flash of courage award goes to a Republican. In fact, a hard-right Freedom Caucus member Republican, Congressman Justin Amash of Michigan, who tweeted a series of messages declaring that Trump's conduct had now reached the threshold of impeachment. Amash, now under full frontal assault from his GOP colleagues, is the first Republican in Congress to go stark raving sane, at least momentarily. Or rather, others who did so were already on the way out, having announced they were planning to not run again or ready to resign, so they could afford their heroism. Reportedly, all of the Repubs go tisk, tisk, tisk in private and roll their eyes and wring their hands, but they certainly suffer fits of speechlessness about any criticism, even a whisper, of Trump in public. Oh dear, it was a mistake to veer toward Washington. Now that we're in D.C., we need to face the gruesome policy that has left a third child dead at the Border Patrol station inside Texas. The Customs and Border Protection Agency could not identify him. A fourth child, another 16-year-old from Guatemala, died after being placed in a shelter for young migrants by the Department of Health and Human Services. The agencies declared themselves saddened at these deaths and those of the little girl who died a few months ago in U.S. custody and the 10-month-old baby found dead in the Rio Grande after a raft carrying migrants overturned near the Texas border. Yeah, we're in Washington, D.C., all right, where the framers of the Constitution decided to place the Capitol as a gesture to keep the southern slaveholding states inside the move toward a republic and unity, moving it from Philadelphia, where the country had been founded. Washington, named for our slaveholding first president, built by slave labor. Washington, where current Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, dislikable for too many reasons to name here, announced that Harriet Tubman, formerly enslaved abolitionist leader, nicknamed Moses and conductor on the Underground Railroad, well, Tubman will not become the face of the $20 bill in our currency until after Trump leaves office. The plan to replace Andrew Jackson's face with that of General Tubman, as Lincoln called her, had started in the Obama administration, and the unveiling was planned for 2020. But now, Mnuchin says, the initiative will be postponed until at least 2026, and the bill itself not likely to be in circulation until 2028. Mnuchin is counting on Trump's second term. Trump, who called the initiative political correctness, loves Andrew Jackson. After all, Jackson massacred Native Americans in the Seminole Wars, and he devised the tragic Long March of Native Americans from the South to forced relocation in Oklahoma, the infamous Trail of Tears during which so many died. Jackson, who praised slavery, opposed abolitionists and suffragists, sold himself as brother to the common man, and rode his horse into the White House, among other things. Are we surprised Trump has his portrait in the Oval Office and likes him a lot? In the We Told You So department, it's no coincidence that measles is spreading rapidly in ultra-Orthodox Jewish and fundamentalist Christian communities. The American Academy of Pediatrics has made it their top priority this year to push for the passage of bills in state senates and assemblies that would prevent parents from claiming their religious beliefs exempt them from legal requirements that their children be vaccinated before going to school. A touch more specificity to add to my last week focus on the Alabama ruling nullifying the right to abortion and the assault in general by anti-choicers. It is not only a vague vast majority of the American public that feels Roe v. Wade should stay exactly as it is. Specifically, it is 67% of the American public who takes that position. Also, though I mentioned that the Alabama law may well make its way to the Supreme Court, I lacked the time last week to mention the other cases already en route there. The court will soon announce whether it will hear challenges to 3 provisions of Indiana abortion laws on such issues as the disposal of fetal remains. Mike Pence, while governor, tried to legislate full, elaborate funerals for fetal tissue, and an 18-hour waiting period after state-mandated ultrasound exams. The court almost certainly will hear the challenge to a Louisiana law that could reduce the number of abortion clinics in the state to a single one. On a slightly more positive note, Google, which in recent years might as well have dropped the middle word from its original slogan, "Do No Evil," has done something good, after being forced to and procrastinating it for a long time, that is. Google has been facing outrage over running misleading abortion-related ads. NARAL Pro-Choice America, aided by the Guttmacher Institute, pressured Google for a long time to eliminate ads from organizations that oppose abortion but present themselves as facilities providing the procedure. A new certification process is now in place at Google to make plain exactly what services an advertiser provides. Scientists recently surveying the remote Cocos Islands in Australia found 414 million pieces of plastic debris, and worse, most of it was buried beneath the surface. This means that estimates of worldwide plastic pollution, often based on surveys not conducted below the surface, could well be drastic underestimates. The Federal Communications Commission has begun auctioning United States rights to radio frequencies for 5G use. But there's a concern, first raised in an internal memo via a U.S. Navy officer, that one of them will interfere with a nearby frequency crucial for meteorologists, the natural frequency of water vapor. Monitoring water vapor yields valuable data that can be fed into weather modeling programs, and forecasters can't simply switch to another band either. The accuracy of forecasts could be set back 50 years, a huge and very dangerous loss given that extreme weather events are on the rise, and now people might not have any warning about them. Only 33 women now lead Fortune 500 companies, and even that is more than ever before. That's according to Fortune magazine. At the other end of the employment spectrum, Me Too movement legal forces have taken on McDonald's, following the leadership of the advocacy group ROC, R-O-C, Restaurant Opportunities Center United, and its co-founder Saru Jayaraman, who first backed McDonald's employees, describing chronic sexual harassment, and then received punishment for having spoken out. Me Too's Legal Defense Fund, formed to extend the muscle of the movement beyond Hollywood, together with the American Civil Liberties Union and the labor group Fight for 15, that's $15 minimum wage, announced the filing of 23 new complaints against McDonald's, including EEOC Commission complaints, civil rights lawsuits, and 2 lawsuits stemming from previous allegations. Last September, hundreds of McDonald's workers walked off the job during the lunch rush, protesting pervasive sexual harassment. And, as I promised, we will close with some good news and a shout-out or two again. In perhaps the first specifically female-centered new initiative to come from any of the Democratic candidates for the nomination, Senator Kamala Harris of California announced her proposal to close the gender wage gap by requiring larger companies to certify that men and women are paid equally in an effort to combat wage discrimination on a federal level. Good for her. Also, in all the news coverage about various courts ruling that banks who have done business with Trump had to hand over the records to valid congressional requests for the material, somebody's been forgotten. This somebody is a woman, and an African-American woman. Tammy McFadden, a former Deutsche Bank anti-money laundering specialist, who was the whistleblower first turning up questionable transactions between the bank and Trump, as well as between the bank and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. According to Ms. McFadden, Deutsche Bank overlooked her findings. Quote, "You present them with everything and you give them a recommendation, nothing happens. It's the Deutsche Bank way. They're prone to discounting everything." Close quote. McFadden, who was just doing her job, she'd been hired to combat financial crime, was terminated last year after she raised concerns about the bank's practices. She has filed complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we salute her. She is literally right on the money. We have to take a short break here, but there's lots more coming up, including Surrealism Corner and Fighting Words, of course, and the conversation with a smart young woman who has been inside congressional offices and worked there and knows what really goes down and can translate for the rest of us, as well as suggesting ways in which we can effectively influence congressional representatives through the group she co-founded, indivisible.org. So all that's still to come. Stick around. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we are back, and we are in the surrealism corner. Where to begin? We could start with the news that Trump is on strike, having stormed out of a meeting with Chuck and Nancy in a fit of supposedly spontaneous pique, then holding a claimed impromptu press conference with a prepared podium and ready-made signs, saying he simply would not do any more government work until Congress stopped investigating him. He's on strike from the presidency, which I think is great. Perhaps this is his way of siding with union labor. Oh, what the hell, let's do this next one, too, although you've already heard it because it went viral, but it's too good not to relish here. Congressional freshwoman Representative Katie Porter, Democrat of California, she with the wide-eyed innocent look, who appears and acts like everybody's ideal kindergarten teacher, yet is pitch-perfect lethal in her questioning in the Oversight Committee. In hearings, while she was interviewing Trump-appointed Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson, who temporarily woke up from his perpetual doze long enough to be rude, dismissive, and pretend the whole thing was a joke, and then he managed to confuse a real estate term with a cookie. Asked about foreclosed homes, REOs, for real estate-owned homes, he thought an REO was an Oreo. You cannot make this stuff up. Also among the language challenged is Republican State Representative Barry Hovis in Missouri, which has joined those states enacting extremist abortion restrictions with so-called heartbeat bills, more accurately termed forced birth bills. In defending the bill, which provides no exception for rape or incest, Hovis said that was fine because most rape is consensual anyway. Yeah. Consensual rape, sort of like suicidal murder, right up there with alternative facts. Hovis tried to backpedal, saying he just meant date rapes. He seems to think date rape is an okay thing. It's a rape. It's a felony. The ignorance of these guys legislating the lives of female human beings leaves you dumbstruck, as well as, in many cases, leaving you with an unwanted pregnancy. State Senator Clyde Chambliss, a chief architect of the Alabama abortion ban, said, quote, "I'm not trained medically, so I don't know the proper medical terminology or timelines, but from what I've read, what I've been told, there is some period of time before you can know a woman is pregnant." Yeah. He then added, "She could end her pregnancy before she knows she's pregnant." What? Alabama anti-lifers, they're anti-life if it's a woman's life in danger. Well, Alabama anti-lifers believe that life begins at conception. But when asked why that wouldn't apply to eggs fertilized in IVF, Chambliss replied, "The egg in the lab doesn't apply. It's not in the moment. She's not pregnant." This is a flat-out admission that the laws are actually about controlling women, not protecting a fetus. In Alabama, attempted abortions will be punishable by up to 10 years in jail. When asked to define what an attempted abortion was, Chambliss had no answer, nor could he reply regarding how doctors could tell the difference between a miscarriage and attempted abortion. Nor is he alone. Ohio Republican John Decker has just introduced a bill banning insurance coverage for abortions with limited exceptions, one of which would be, wait for this one, the reimplantation of an ectopic pregnancy into the uterus. Doctors pointed out that such technology does not exist, nor would the human body tolerate it. But he's not the first. Back in 2015, Idaho's Republican-controlled State House was debating a bill to bar doctors from offering medication abortion services via telemedicine, and GOP State Representative Vito Barbieri asked a doctor testifying in opposition to the bill whether women couldn't swallow tiny cameras for relayed gynecological exams. The doctor replied, "No, because when you swallow something, it does not end up in your vagina." Barbieri replied, "That's fascinating. That makes sense." These guys are always just so ahead of their time and the technology and the human body's capacities. Going abroad for a moment, here's one from the inscrutable North Korean official news agency. By the way, are Italians or Brits or Finns scrutable? Stereotypes are so stereotypical. Anyway, come back, my wanderlust brain. North Korea's official news agency has entered the pundit circle regarding our 2020 presidential race. They've attacked Joe Biden as a, quote, snob bereft of elementary quality as human being, close quote. Well, that seems pretty mean. But then they went a bit too far. Quote, he is always self-praising himself, that's a bit redundant, as being the most popular presidential candidate. This is enough to make a cat laugh, close quote. Now, just a minute there. Anyone who has ever been so fortunate as to be in touch with a cat knows that cross-culturally, no matter the circumstances, cats do not laugh. They don't just not laugh. Rarely, they don't laugh. It has been suggested that this is because they feel laughter is beneath their dignity. But other cat scholars claim that it is simply that cats find nothing worthy of their risibility. You could consider yourself extremely fortunate as a human being if, after years of patient servitude to a cat, you might possibly be able to solicit a small, ironic, fleeting smile. This week, under our words from another language that are untranslatable into English without full sentences to parse them, is from the German, yet again. It is innerer Schweinhund, literally, inner pig dog. Inner pig dog describes just who is in charge when you're too lazy to go to the gym, or get up an hour early so you won't have to rush, or leave your writing deadline until the last possible minute. But the blame is all on your inner pig dog, the teensy voice in the back of your head trying to convince you that a life of inertia is ideal. Total sloth. Sleeping late and then having a nap. Eating popcorn and potato chips in bed. Not bothering to change your sweatpants for days on end until they stand up by themselves. And generally sliding into another great word in German, Kuddelmuddel. Remember Kuddelmuddel? We did Kuddelmuddel, an unstructured mass chaos or a hodgepodge that your innerer Schweinhund adores, because it can't even be bothered being surreal. Time for another break. But first, once upon a time, there were a number of staffers of Congress people on the Hill, and they noticed these young people, what worked and what didn't. What letters and emails got just trashed, thrown in the circular file, whether online or reality. They noticed which phone calls worked and why, or if they worked at all. They noticed whether sit-ins or marches were more effective, and they made note of all these things, and then they formed, yes, indivisible.org, which in no small part was responsible for the 2016 election triumphs all over the country for progressive candidates. And one of those founders has been a guest repeatedly on this program, and she's back with us again today, and that's coming right up, so don't go anywhere. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to the conversation. Today, the conversation is with Leah Greenberg, a recidivist guest returning to the program for the third or fourth time. She and her husband, Ezra Levin, are co-founders of indivisible.org, together with other members of that wonderful group, which provides strategies and tips and resources for being an activist who makes an actual impact on Congress. Indivisible.org has recently launched a new offensive, and we're going to hear about it today. And by the way, Leah and Ezra have recently been named by Time magazine two of the 100 most influential people in the country and possibly the world. So, here is Leah Greenberg and Indivisible. Leah, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, you have not been lazy in the interim. I hold Indivisible, the idea of Indivisible and what you've done, you and the group of organizers that you are, to educate really the American public as to what their tools are for democracy. And the minute they actually began to understand that, they began to really use them in the most extraordinary way, which is why we have the House back. But now we're moving along, and Indivisible launched a whole new initiative. I'll just lay back and let you talk about it.
Absolutely. So shortly after we took back the House, we updated the Indivisible strategy to focus on what was possible and what was not possible in a divided Congress. So having taken the House, what does it mean that Democrats control one branch of government in terms of oversight and investigations, in terms of moving legislation, just in terms of what it means for Washington overall. And so the point of Indivisible on Offense was that this was an opportunity for folks who had spent the last 2 years fighting back terrible bills in a Republican Congress to go on offense, to push for the kind of proactive progressive policies that we really care about, to push for aggressive investigations into the Trump administration's misdoings, and really to take back the narrative from in Washington and thus around the country. And so over the last several months, we've been working with Indivisible groups around the country to make sure that we are supporting or providing the grassroots push for that big, broad, progressive agenda, for everything from H.R. 1, the For the People Act, which is a far-ranging agenda for restoring democracy in this country, to efforts around H.R. 6, the Dream and Promise Act, which is focused on making sure that the populations of folks whose visas have been revoked by the Trump administration, Dreamers, and folks under the temporary protected status visa are able to be safe here in the country. So doing a lot of advocacy around legislation that we care about and that we think is important for Democrats to present an alternate vision of the future, and then pushing Democrats to also stand up and be bold in holding this administration accountable on everything, on all of the investigations that we need to do into the cabinet, into Trump's own personal misdoings, into follow up on the Mueller report.
Okay, all of which is wonderful. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. What do we say to those people who say, what's the point of moving a remarkable agenda, which the Democrats have done impressively in the last even couple of weeks, when it won't go anywhere in the Senate? What's the point of moving toward impeachment when the Senate won't vote for it? What's the point?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say a few things. For each of those, there's a different strategic reason why you do it. You move a bold progressive agenda now because when it comes to 2021, you want to be ready on day one. So you want to have worked out your inter-party disagreements. You want to have aligned on something you can pass. You want to be ready you want basically off-the-shelf legislation that can go. And this is the opportunity, this is the moment for people to really have those inter-party debates about ideas and come to a consensus. And that's happening in Congress. And it's also happening through the presidential election as different presidential candidates debate their visions. This is a period when we won't be able to pass anything, but we will decide on the things that get passed in 2021 if, knock on wood, we take the presidency and we take the Senate. So that's why legislation now is really important, because the first bill that's passed in 2019 is probably going to be the first bill that's passed in 2021. And that time it'll be for real. So that's one piece. The other piece on investigations and on impeachment. Look, I think that we think that Democrats need to take the initiative here. We are not going to be able to impeach Donald Trump, almost certainly, or at least we're almost certainly not going to be able to get Donald Trump out of office. But that said, in a situation where the president has, there's credible evidence that the president has committed impeachable crimes, it is the responsibility of Congress to move forward. And to the extent that people are afraid of doing that, I think it reflects a lack of understanding of their own ability to shape the narrative. By refusing to move forward, we're actually kind of conceding Trump's overall case that, you know, this is not serious and it's not grave. And by moving forward, we're actually bringing together all of the different things that Trump has done into one single narrative and establishing in the public mind that this is a very, very serious situation and that the president does need to face accountability.
What do you think of the response, which at times I confess I have taken, which is that it's not necessarily an either or, we must move to impeach right now or else we're being appeasers. You know, it's not necessarily that why can't it be a both and? I mean, it seems to me, at least as he's been going so far, that he happens to be my congressman, Jerry Nadler, chair of the major investigative committee of the judiciary, that committee is basically impeaching in everything except name, which is, I know, a problem for some, but then others would say, well, it robs the Trumpians of their latest grievance of how persecuted they are, and it may be maybe the hearings, once they get started, which I realize the White House is stalling, but once they get started, that of course was what I remember it well turned the Nixon impeachment around, because 40% of the country, he had just been reelected by a landslide yet, and 40% of the country still thought, it's not that bad, even if he's a crook. The hearings made the difference. So I've been waiting not so much for Mueller, although that too, but when that was less than I'd hoped for, I've been pinning my hopes on the hearings. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Well, I guess what I would say is I don't think it's going to be any one single thing, because I think if there was going to be a light bulb moment when Trump's base abandoned him, it would have happened a long time ago. We've passed so many different markers in terms of Democratic breakdown at this point, and we haven't seen that moment when, people really break and run for the exits. I do think that you're totally right that part of the debate on impeachment is, and it's a discussion about messaging, rather than necessarily a discussion about what investigations are going to move forward.
Right.
I think what we do need to see is fairly aggressive on all fronts pursuit of the different investigatory avenues that are available, and really structuring those to maximally share with the public the findings that are coming out, and to make the public case. Now, what I would say on impeachment as a word, though, is that I think that there's this classic problem that we have with Democrats, which is that they look at today's polls and they see something's not popular, and they say, "Oh, well, we should stay very far away from that."
Yeah.
Impeachment's not currently, supported by the majority of folks, but that's not surprising at all because both parties have spent the last 2 years dismissing it as a crazy idea.
Yes.
What Democrats forget is that they actually have an enormous amount of power to shape the public perception if they are willing to actually make a public case around the thing.
Yes.
And that's, I think, what we need to see from them.
So the programs that Indivisible will be encouraging at the local level are?
So we're continuing to encourage folks to really weigh in on their elected officials. We think the next really big upcoming fight is actually going to be the budget fight, which is coming in the fall. That's going to be the first time when, we're moving from messaging bills to legislation that definitely has to pass because nobody wants the government to shut down again. And we know that this is going to be the next time that Trump tries to really push his anti-immigrant agenda, tries to re-up his demands for wall money, tries to get a lot more funding for the deportation machine. And that's going to be a really critical fight. And so we're really urging people to contact their elected officials now and make sure that they understand that this is going to be the part of what we sent them to Washington to do is to stand up to Trump on his anti-immigrant agenda. That's a big part of it. We're also supporting for the next few months state legislative campaigns in a lot of key states, focusing on efforts to expand democracy at the state level. But the other big thing that we're starting to think about is how do we all engage enthusiastically and constructively in the presidential primary? Because, I think that we all agree that the top goal of 2020 is beating Donald Trump. And to do that, we're going to need to get an exciting, strong, well-vetted nominee. And then we're all going to need to get behind them. And so we actually launched nationwide a pledge focusing on each of those points, making the primary constructive, on rallying behind the ultimate winner, and on putting all of our collective weight as the grassroots and as the candidates running behind the ultimate winner in order to beat Trump. And so we're signing up activists who are excited about that, and we're going to be working with them both to enthusiastically engage in the primary and then to enthusiastically support the winner.
And the pledge is twofold. It's for the candidates to sign on to, and many of them have, that they will run a civil campaign and support whoever wins it. And it's also for indivisibles. Am I correct? Or am I
Yes, that's right. There are two pledges. One is for the candidates, and that's committing to make the primary constructive and to really focus on ideas and visions for the future. Now, that is not the same thing as a commitment to never criticize each other or to have an entirely positive primary. We think that part of getting a healthy or a great nominee is having a real exchange of ideas. And part of getting a strong nominee is having them be vetted by running in a race where they are tested. Right. But we are saying is let's all engage from the same place, which is that we know at the end of the day we are getting behind the winner.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that has a huge effect on the followers of a particular candidate. I mean, I still am bitter that Bernie didn't know enough to, or didn't want to, or whatever went wrong, clamp down sufficiently on the Bernie bros so that they were not also chanting, lock her up about Hillary. I mean, when that comes from supposedly your own flank of the world, that really hurts. So I'm one of those people who, go grind my teeth about destroying each other in primaries. And then when you face the general, you're so wounded from your own family, that you have a harder time. What would you say in terms of the stonewalling of the subpoenas? Do you with your backgrounds as congressional aides, do you feel that eventually the White House will have to give up the ghost and answer those subpoenas with its staff members, the very people, and now the banks, everyone they're trying to press not to cooperate with investigative committees?
Look, I think that what we've seen across the board from the Trump administration is that they have no particular attachment to the rule of law if it any way undermines or threatens to embarrass or endanger their position. And, we're seeing that with their reaction to pursuing tax returns. We're seeing that with their reactions to normal oversight of most of the different agencies. This is a lawless administration. And that's part of why we think it's really important to ultimately stress not just a lot of different individual bad things that are happening, but an overarching pattern that's sufficiently grave that that people understand that this is the dominant theme of the administration.
Yeah. And what do you say, last question, because you have to run and make a revolution, by following the Constitution, amazingly enough, how refreshing. But last question, if somebody said this to me the other day, I'm very busy, as if we weren't all. She said, I'm very busy and I need to know, focus me, she asked, on the one thing that I can do that might make a difference. I'm not naive. I know it doesn't happen through one person doing one thing, at which point I said to her, sometimes it can. I didn't want to let her off the hook. But she said, if I have time to do only one thing, and I sent her to your guide, I don't have time to go to town hall meetings. I don't this, I don't that. I don't have time to volunteer. What would it be? What would you tell her?
I'm gonna make a shameless plug for signing up for our email list, because we send a weekly email with your 5 weekly to-dos. And those are updated based on our policy staff's advice on what is the most high impact thing you can do this week. What can you be calling Congress about? Are there critical things happening in your state legislature that you need to make your voice heard on? Is there something that you should be doing to make sure to support different candidates in different races? We provide those updates and make sure that people always have the most effective way that they can take action, because it changes on a daily basis.
Thank you again so much, and thanks for coming back and updating us.
Thank you. It's been a wild ride, and we're not done yet.
And right here, right now, we have to take one final pause before we return with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
And welcome back again to some fighting words. Upside down, inside out, as citizens of a once free, although flawed, republic, no wonder we feel dizzy and slightly nauseated all the time. Legislators using phrases like consensual rape, political spokespeople arguing that there are alternate facts, flat-out insistent lies way beyond mere opinion, since there are visual, audible, written records and testimonies proving their falsehood. The size of crowds, for example. What was said in a videotaped interview. What was promised but never delivered. What was done in public but then boldly, baldly denied. Enough of these, and they now come in an avalanche daily, begin to make tiny dents in one's self-confidence and one's sense of reality, until the blizzard of tiny pebbles becomes a pelting of stones, and finally a hillside of boulders, burying the self, burying the truth, burying the real. This happens through language, which I discuss often and passionately. It happens through actions, too, and through short-term tactics and long-term strategies. It is at once so blatant and so subtle that it confuses the rational mind. It's so continual that it exhausts attempts to select one discrete example and analyze that one constructively. and it is so massive as to seem overwhelming and all-powerful, thus invoking despair. It's so absurd that in lighter moments we liken it to being in Wonderland or behind the looking glass, with ourselves as Alice, shrinking down, ballooning up, now and then traduced, misled, and even sentenced to be beheaded. There is fear here. But you know what? It's not so bad to be right, at least in historical political terms. In personal relationships, focusing on who's right and who's wrong in arguments, well, I have found that to be counterproductive at the minimum and openly destructive at the max. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about personal arguments over whether the world is flat or climate change is happening or Adam, Eve, and the dinosaurs all cohabited simultaneously. But being right, based on serious evidence acquired in serious study by serious people, is quite a useful thing. And I found myself thinking how we wild-eyed, wild-haired, rebel feminists of the late 1960s through the 70s, and, for some of us, onward and continuing today, well, we were bloody well right about some things. Ultra-egalitarianism, ultra-collectivity, lefty jargon, or jargon of any sort. No, that is not what we were right about. By far. But equal pay for equal work, and more importantly, equal pay for comparable worth, we were right about that. We were right about a woman's right to reproductive freedom, and freedom from domestic violence, and sexual harassment, and right to choose whom she loved, woman or man or both. We were right about the right to our own anger. Mind you, these were all regarded as excessive, destructively radical ideas that hurt the incremental, humble progress women might be making. I was told I was going too far so many times I chose those 3 words as the title of one of my books. Today, with literally millions of women in the street, in this country alone, whether at the women's marches or over reproductive rights or any of the other so-called women's issues, which are all issues, including racism, bigotry of any sort, ageism, discrimination against a person's origins or class or disability, or any of the other stupid, cruel pain our species is capable of inflicting. Today, when I see all these women on the move and more ready to move each day, I think, with wonder, my God, we were right. And we were right to believe that women would be the ones to begin to turn it around. Because of the Orwellian 1984 thinking inherent in such phrases as consensual, rape, and alternative fact, and so many other examples, I spent some hours the other day with the memory of an old friend, gone now, but I was in conversation with her mind. It was Mary Daly, the feminist philosopher. I'm glad Mary didn't live to see these days, although the ferocity of her intellect would have made much of the Trumpist reversals, since she spoke and wrote often of reversal as being one of the 4 central methods of patriarchal mystification, along with erasure, false polarization, and divide and conquer. In her earlier books, as she freed herself more and more from being a radical Catholic theologian, this theme already appears. She notices that Adam gives birth to Eve, Zeus to Athena. The body and blood of the Eucharist inverts the actual body that births and feeds with its own flesh and milk, the female body. She notices the subliminal message even in the naming of dangerous hurricanes as female, a practice the women's movement got changed, and you know what? We were laughed at for that campaign. She noticed and named false inclusion and false polarization. Not stopping with Orwell's fictional Joy Camp, which was renamed from a forced labor camp, Mary explored her own real-life examples like homemaker, rest cure, finishing schools, intensive care, the natural look, and more. She felt Orwell was correct in having written, ultimately it was hoped to make articulate speech issue from the larynx without involving higher brain centers at all. About such terrifying, tyrannical plans and plots, she urged what she termed positive paranoia. Mary noted the Christian Trinity as a distorted mirror image of the tripartite matriarchal goddess, the Virgin Mother Crone archetype. She noted that her once cherished Christianity, in which she held numerous doctorates of divinity, had stolen archetypal images, powerful themes from ancient indigenous faith systems that followed matrilineal descent, and then elevated patriarchy, and then demonized the original systems. Trio or Troika, the triple goddess, was derived from the Latin word trivium. That word in English is trivia. What a reversal. As late as the Middle Ages, crossroads, specifically places where three roads converged, were believed to be a focus of spiritual power. In the Scottish Highlands and in Scandinavia, divination was believed possible if one sat on a three-legged stool at the convergence of three roads when the clock struck midnight on Samhain, known in the modern world as All Hallows' Eve or Halloween. Think what has become of the word trivia. In a world where gold is more important than fresh air, Mary wrote, and consequently easier to find. Mary was not always painless to know. She was a high-maintenance friend, Daly, and worth every minute of one's indigestion. She drove me crazy, and I miss her keenly. If you've never read her, try it. Start with the earlier books and ease into the wildness of the late ones that are, well, a mixture of James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and pure Mary. And she would argue with me for saying that. If you know her work already, take down a book or two from your shelves and browse again through that daring, darling, enduring mind. The basic thing is, she was right. I was right in going too far. Those of you listening who know what I mean, or maybe were there, we were right. I don't write these words or say them out of personal ego or puffy pride, and I take no pleasure in the memory that our having been right means that many of our species family were wrong, or that we ourselves were often wrong. Certainly me. So in the coming months, I want to find ways to pay homage to my contemporaries. If I do that, bear with me. It's not the sentimentality of a survivor. These were women who forged feminist theory out of feminist action and experience, well before feminist theory became an abstract requirement for advancing in academic circles by writing unintelligible knockoffs of the puerile scribblings by Frenchmen like Derrida and Lacan. These were and are the feminist theorists because they were also in the streets, where women now find ourselves again. And what an excellent way to deflect the pebbles and stones and boulders coming at us now. We have a herstory, yes, because we dug it up from burial by previous avalanches, and where we couldn't find it, we built it anew, and we were right to do so. Remember that. Women today, in the streets and boardrooms, in the House of Representatives and in convents and McDonald's, are right to trust that. right side up. See you at the crossroads. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for today. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRobinMorgan and on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRobinMorgan. Check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for our show. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.